Call to order the meeting of the zoning bylaw committee for February 22nd, 2023. Roll call of who's here.
Jack Creighton here.
Tom Callahan is here, and Clark Brewer.
Clark Brewer here.
And Cassandra Day here, and Judge Cutler.
Hi.
So Cassandra, if we're just going to go quickly over the slideshow and kind of go over how we should present it. I think there's places where it'll, you know, my thought about it is dwell on the things at the end, which I'm leaving the ones for the most discussion at the end, and kind of fly through a lot of it as truly just housekeeping stuff. And Judge Cutler will be there, and believe me, I'm not going to be shy about deferring to you. Question, but Cassandra, if you could share the screen with it, we can take a look at it.
So I'm working on pulling that up, but my computer is acting a little funny. So it's loading and we'll see how far we get.
All right, well, I have it. I can bring it up, but I won't have any color print on it. But, well, actually, the version of my computer would, but not the printed version.
Just as a piece of business, was I supposed to write up a little sentence or two for each of the warrant articles explaining?
That will be needed. That will be needed for the warrant.
Okay, when is that?
I'm guessing the absolute outside deadline is before it goes to the printer. So I would think sometime I would shoot for March, sometime, you know, no later than
Okay, by the end of this week or early next week.
Yeah, the earlier the better.
Okay, all right.
But we always, if you look at one of our own warrants, every article usually has in a text box a little short explanation.
Right.
And they, you know, they don't have to be super short enough to explain it.
Right.
We do have to decide, I guess, when we get a little closer to the printing, is how are we going to present the articles themselves in the warrant and everything. You know, this handout is fine with side by side, but it's a lot of pages to print and copy and put on people's chairs. And
I don't think you need to, because the bylaw is readily available on the website if anybody wants to look at it, you know, and compare it.
yeah,
But I think the more important thing is it looks worse than it is in terms of any substantive changes. And so really, in describing what each article is, most of them we can say they're primarily housekeeping, editorial, and organizational changes. There's no substantive changes except, and then we can call out the
right.
2 or 3 or 4 things that people ought to be aware of in particular. And then at the floor of town meeting, if you wanted to put up a comparison of those things, that would seem to be the appropriate thing, rather than comparing sentence to sentence when it's just a change in phrasing or you know, or organization. I think you're going to get people confused if you start doing that.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. And I think that for town meeting, you know, we'll just have all these slides available. And if somebody says, can I actually see the language? Because I can imagine a curmudgeon or two doing that. So
of the existing language. I mean, I would hope that you would print it. Most of these are going to be reprinted as they will appear in the bylaw and as voted on. They should be in the warrant in total.
yeah, I think the motions you have put together, the warrant articles, that's probably what's going to go into the warrant.
Yeah, so people will have it in front of them.
They'll have that, and then it will have slides available for places where we have to show comparisons.
Okay, that makes sense. Yes.
I think for this first thing, and again, it's sort of a test run too for this, is to, you know, we'll flip through these slides with the side by side, and again, blow through them and highlight the ones that have some changes. Like in Article 12, really the only substantive change, I don't even think the site plan review thing is a super substantive change.
It is. It is.
All right, well, and that one I might just say to you, to, you know, I might just ask you to explain it rather than me. And,
Sure.
but it, you know, the fine thing I would point out, but there's not much in the others. But anyway, so there's the head page, and thank you to Cassandra, who has dressed up. I only worked in Word documents to do these, so it was really not very pretty. For the bylaw committee and staff, I'm going to point out, and for at least for this forum, and perhaps for town meeting, I'm going to introduce you all and have you stand up and wave. It's been pointed out to me that in past forums, I hadn't introduced the whole committee, and that's a very good point. And I think everybody should get to see who you are and see your face. So for the presentation to the planning board and to the other boards, I wouldn't expect that because they should know who the players are. So
Right.
all right.
And not to be picky, but Cassandra, either
Yes.
take off the reference to be being a former justice of the land court or put in former chief justice, one or the other.
Oh,
Former,
I
can fix that.
I really don't think you need that reference on there. I think as long as you just say town council, I think you're good.
Sure.
But
Well,
it's
well, I would
do-
put town council from KP Law, and my bad that I forgot you were the chief. So you earned it, so you should get to have it up there. So Cassandra,
Okay.
well,
All right.
I think that we all are very proud that we have a former chief justice of the land court. And I think it also will give great gravitas to the importance of what we're doing. And maybe we'll keep some people from screaming a little as loud as they would like to, but I think that's pretty good. I think you've earned it, Chief Justice.
All right. Okay.
all right,
All
yeah, so
right.
Cassandra, if you could make a note of that, and
Making a note now.
okay, thank you. The rest of the next couple of slides were things I had thought of a long time ago when we first thought of a forum to roll this out. And I think since, we're redoing the whole bylaw, we should probably explain some background on the process and the law. And so that's what these next few slides are. I don't want to super dwell on them, but I just think it's important to have some background, and we may repeat this in the fall. Just on the assumption we have different people in attendance, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knows how zoning and land use looks. And it's funny, a friend of mine today was complaining about some house project across from the yacht club, apparently going in wetlands, and was under the assumption that the planning board supervised the Concom. Well, so
No.
I think there's a lot of people who do not know how
Yeah.
the structure of everything works,
Right.
unless and until they come to get permits and they realize they got to go to 2 or 3 or 4 boards. So I'm going to put that through. I think Woody has seen a version of this earlier, but the history, I think I'm pretty accurate on the history of what's happened in Cohasset. I remember the first state zoning law and the amendments and blah, 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 when chapter 48 was written. I've looked that up myself, but Judge Cutler, if those are wrong, let me know. And then for the timing of Cohasset, it was 1955, and I just maybe it's a little snarky, but putting in that it was passed at a special town meeting rather than an annual town meeting for those who are going to get snarky about it. But I thought that was an interesting point to put out.
I don't think it's snarky. I think it's a important point of history and for what has been done.
Right.
And especially with the current ways things are done. I think it's an important thing to highlight.
Okay, thank you, David. And Dave, let's make the record note that David Ferry is here tonight as well. And then as far as what I consider the core, the district's uses and dimensions, I believe we talked about this at length at some time from in the working group, but I believe it was 86 was the last time that certainly the table of dimensions was looked at and redone in any comprehensive way. I would explain to people that we see zoning bylaws almost every year, and there are tweaks here, and sometimes there's substance, and a lot of things have been added on. But the real core of it was 86. I believe at one point, Woody had said there might have been one in the 70s, but I couldn't find any reference to that. And then I
You
think
would have had to have written an entire new bylaw after 1975 because every town had to
okay.
had to
Well,
adopt a new bylaw to conform to 40A.
Yeah, and then in 69 seems to be the point in time when
I'm trying to figure out how I can stop that.
who's ringing? Yeah, put your phone on silent. I'll do it like I saw a judge do last week. Put that thing on silent or it will be confiscated. And you can come back at 4:30 for it.
Wow.
No, they do. They hate having those things go off. So in 1969, I believe that was the time when Cohasset, when we switched from, frontages that were more like suburbs, 100, 125, 150 to what we have today. So I think 1969 is an important date to point out. It'll become important, when we discuss Article 5 in the chart in the fall. There's always, it'll come up the question, why are we doing this? So these are the kind of answers that we had been working with from the working group. We had talked to some expert who conducts training for planning boards and such, and he's the one who gave us the 5 to 10 year thing. And it's been 36 years since we've really looked at anything to the core of the bylaw. So, if there's any other reasons that people think are appropriate to bring up as to why we're doing this, because again, I think we should anticipate that somebody may ask for it.
Well, I will say, fundamentally, the zoning bylaws are what we as a community all believe the future of Cohasset should be directed, or what rights landowners and homeowners have and what they can do with those rights in the future, whether it's easier or more difficult.
Right, and that's kind of what I was trying to hit with those last series of bullets. To point out that our town is very different.
Yes, I think it's not just Cohasset, but anywhere in metropolitan Boston, neighborhoods are change averse, and anybody wants to do something. There's a lot of interests in what that is, as well as fear of the unknown that drives a lot of, I think, behavior that that reinforces the desire for the status quo.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And as you volunteer answers to here, and if you give the perfect answer, Clark, you could be called upon to answer that question at town meeting too. I don't want to dominate the conversation at all.
Tom, I'm just wondering for this particular forum, because we really are not proposing a lot of major changes to the current sections of the bylaw that you're dealing with.
That's right.
This time around. It might be important more, I don't think you have to emphasize so much that you're going to be changing a lot and new regulations, but maybe focus on the fact that there are new, we want to bring it up to date with current state law and the way it's been interpreted by the courts, that we want to try and bring it up to date in terms of, or we're looking at bringing it up to date eventually in terms of planning ideas that are out there that are now, being talked about and particularly required, such as going to be the housing choice requirements. I don't know if you want to get into that at this point, or you want to say that.
What I might do with this slide then is like sort of just leave it at the reorganization and the housekeeping and what the organizational mess this is. Cassandra, in that first bullet after the state law, can you put in a comma, court decisions, and then it'll say and development patterns.
Sorry, can you repeat that? You got a little staticky. Comma and
I'm
what?
sorry, after law, state law.
Yep.
Comma, the, comma, court decisions.
Okay.
Just insert that in there.
Well, I mean, actually,
Um,
state law includes, state law.
All right,
really
well, that's, all right, that's
fine.
fine.
That's fine.
All right, then leave it. All right.
Don't change it.
No, don't change it then.
Okay.
And we may see if this can squeeze in about dealing with new, as I said, I had the state law manning and maybe say other, to the extent there's room for another bullet, maybe other new initiatives regarding climate and things of that sort. I think we can maybe add another bullet, but in terms of the presentation to this town meeting and this forum, yeah, we can depart from this page when we get to the reorganization.
Yeah.
Emphasize that this first step is dealing with that, you know. Then I want to just tell people how the bylaw is organized since we switched to the E360. Cassandra, can you scroll down a minute? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you ought to strike out the references to the subdivision control law. Quite frankly, it gets people confused enough. It's two different animals, and when you list it under, the, you know, combining it gets a little bit confusing. I mean, don't you want to focus on the zoning bylaw as opposed to everything else?
All right. All right.
Opposed
Take
to the
it.
general-
Take the reference out here. I like the reference in talking about the overall regulatory scheme for land
right,
use.
right. But here we're really
All right.
talking about the reorganizer within the 360 system, including the zoning bylaw. You know, so they're all in one.
All right.
Basically.
So consider that bullet that says subdivision control law will be out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then just pointing out the articles we have. Our charts, our districts, so that's just giving everybody just an overview of the way it is. All right, the next one, I just, again, in the explanation of what we're doing and how we're doing it, since we don't get a lot of public attendance at these meetings, I thought I would just have a page about how it is that we've approached this. And I don't know if anybody has anything to add, whether this is worthwhile. Certainly at some point we have to point out what's the order of presentation, but that's, it's not going to be just strict numerical order, but.
I think we can talk later about whether or not you're going to make it with all of those in the fall. Given how long it's taken us to do the basic articles for this spring, I think it's pretty
yes, we will.
But go for it anyway, see what happens.
Oh, we will get there. I can assure you. Anyway,
Okay.
so, all right, then so that's it for like the introductory material, and then getting into the different, each article with the side by side, and some of them are parts that are voted together. I see they're missing a parentheses in the heading of that one.
Excuse me,
At the
Tom.
end. Yep.
I wonder, sometimes because the warrant articles are warrant articles, and it sometimes gets confusing with the zoning articles, where you have zoning article 1 and you have warrant which is warrant article 7, or changes to zoning article 1, which is warrant article 7. I wonder if there's a way to massage that in a way that avoids unnecessary confusion.
Well, at the moment, the warrant hasn't been established to the point where everything's been assigned a place yet.
I understand.
When we get to town meeting, yes, we're gonna have to somehow explain that, but I don't know, do we have to?
I mean, you could use a slightly different word like section 1 and 13.
Well,
Yeah, except that the subdivisions of each article is a section. So you know what, we can talk about that further when we get to close to the town meeting, but we somehow have to, I think, rely on the fact that people can understand the difference between a warrant article and a zoning bylaw article.
You can just, when you're referring to the warrant article, say warrant article. When you're referring to the zoning bylaw article, just say zoning article. Or bylaw article.
Yeah, I'll just say, we'll get up to, let's say it's Article 7 is, all right, so, Danny will ask us to start the presentation. Okay, Article 7 is dealing with Articles 1 and 13 as found in the zoning bylaw. And this is the changes are gonna, these are purely housekeeping changes. And in terms of housekeeping, just saying, consolidating, cleaning up language, modernizing language, taking out unnecessary references, bringing in proper references to state law, blah, 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 blah. That's it. That's a 1-minute explanation for it. But I think we just need to be, Danny's going to announce them in order, whatever warrant article it is, and we just need to be clear that everybody knows what it's referring to. But I think they can make the distinction between a warrant article and zoning article, I hope. But we'll find out. I mean, if people are confused when we have these other previous forums, if people are confused, then we'll address it. So this one would be one to explain in 1 minute and blow through. What's the next one? Article 3. It has the big note that I would just say this might go away if we don't have the map ready, but again, this is housekeeping edits, nothing of substance, really just updating the map references at this point. And then.
Well, the one substantive change is the change in how the zoning is applied when a zoning boundary divides a lot, slightly different than it was before.
Okay.
That language is different, so I suppose we should amplify on that a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. And the change we've made is explained in 2 seconds.
Andy, I have to remember what it was. I do remember that there was a change, but I think a use permitted on one portion of the lot may be extended 50 feet into the other portion.
Yeah.
And the first portion includes required lot width and depth, and only if the lot has frontage on the street in the less restricted district. And we changed it so it had to have frontage in the more restricted district. And we also clarified that you can extend it into the more restricted district, I think. Let me just check.
All right, then somebody's going to ask, what effect does that have? And
yes,
I'm not aware that there's too many places in town where we have this
It doesn't
conflict
seem-
except along 3A, where there are some properties that are both residential and highway business.
the new change allows the regulation from either district to go into the other district, provided the lot has frontage on the street in the less restrictive district. That is if you have a business residential, the less restrictive is the business. So if it has frontage in the less restrictive district, you can go either way. But if the frontage is in the residential district, you wouldn't be able to extend the business district into the residential district.
You would be able to.
If you don't have frontage in the business district, you can't extend the business use into the residential district.
Okay. Yeah, and I just think as a practical matter, unless somebody else knows another example, I don't think that comes up.
Right.
Other than with a property like the Stop and Shop property and some of the others that might be along 3A that go.
Yeah.
That are
But
deep.
they have the commercial on the front,
Right.
so they're good.
So it's probably not any practical change whatsoever.
Not really any practical.
Well, to a minor extent, if you had a property in residence C that abutted Residence B district, then you might want to try to apply the 35,000 square feet instead of the 1.5 acres. I suppose.
But
there's-
only if you had frontage in the less restricted district, the bigger district.
Right,
I mean, the smaller district, sorry, the Residence C district. You have frontage in the Residence C district, and you want to use the Residence C district regulations, you can go up to 50 feet into the Residence B to do that,
right, or 200
Yeah.
feet with a special
or
permit.
200 feet with this special permit. Right.
Yeah.
I don't, Cassandra, between now and town meeting, not necessarily for Monday's forum, but I wonder, maybe take a quick glance at whether we have any other boundary conflicts on a single property,
Sure.
like between B and C, maybe A and B, maybe there are some A and B ones. The ones in the residential stretch of 3A, I don't think they have any commercial that interferes with them, so it wouldn't apply to those. The 3A commercial properties would probably see no change due to this. And I guess we can just get ready for town meeting to see if there was anybody else that might somehow be affected by
Yeah.
this. Okay, so we'll blow through that one too fairly quickly. What's the next one? 6, the signs.
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily want to dwell too much on this, because this really, I think, is just reorganization, some consolidations and cleaning up.
Right, and cleaning up some of the definitions. The only two, I would say the two major changes in this are that you've further defined or broadened the definition of political non-commercial signs. So
Mhm.
it's more than just political issues. It's, to the extent of free speech for non-commercial purposes. And then the second thing is that you put a height limit on the sign structures.
Yes,
Wasn't there before.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the political one is driven by court decisions, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Good, we can blame judges, good. All right, what's next then? So we're kind of blowing through these as quickly as possible. Obviously, if people have questions, we'll stop
Mhm.
and deal with their questions. Okay, so Article 12, again, I think this is another one which certainly the first section, which I always thought was very confusing, or section 1 and section 2 of our existing bylaw always seemed to be gobbledygook to me. But I think we're certainly doing this for clarity's sake. We are increasing the fine, I can point that out. And the rest is really, again, reorganizing, just cleaning up language, simplifying in places and
Trying to
complying with state.
conform to state law, yeah.
Yeah. And then the site plan, how would we quickly explain that is?
I think you've expanded the application of site plan review and altered the process to a certain degree. It was a much more limited application than the current situation.
Okay. And again,
So
if I get stuck on something, I
Yeah.
am punting to you quickly. So,
Okay, all right.
all right. So then I don't think we're spending a lot of time on 12 either. We'll point out some of, again, the fine thing I think people should know. And, we're just catching up to state law maximum, and we're catching up to what Concom can already do, and I think the Board of Health. All right, so the definitions, again, in large part, this will be cleaning it up, but I think we're going to be dealing with the definition of height, and that's why I wanted to put this toward the end so we can have room for discussion on it. I did think it was important in the slide to at least try to summarize the two positions we have on it. I don't know if anybody wants to edit those or take issue with those, but rather than me trying to explain it, but put it up there in writing, what
Were you gonna have drawings? Did you say you were gonna do drawings or sketches or something? I think Clark mentioned that last time.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have diagrams that show what the
all right.
practical impact of the change would be.
Cassandra, there was a
The old
sketch.
diagram.
Yeah, there was a sketch that we did in the working group that was going to accompany the new definition. Can we find that? And
Yeah,
throw it
sure.
in? We can throw it into the slide, and then again, we tried the laser pointer on the Zoom screen in this room, and you can't see the red dot on the Zoom screen. So, you know, I guess maybe manually. go up to
Labeled?
it.
Is the sketch labeled?
Well, the sketch is written for the new definition, but I mean, it's showing a building with a pitched roof, so it'll be pretty easy to explain the difference between the peak and the middle. I think just by pointing at it in some way. It's just.
But I
it's
mean,
just,
if somebody just wrote on the sketch where the finished grade is, where the roof line
Right.
is, you know, those things just that are in relation to each other, so people can.
Okay,
pretty
is
much
that
see.
doable by Monday night, Cassandra? If you need help, I can, if you send me the sketch, I could do it too, so.
Yeah, that should be doable before Monday night. In terms of the placement, I probably can't fit it on the slide that's currently on the screen, but I could add a slide after that, and then you could always flip back and forth between them.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that, yeah. But I hope that sketch is on your or Lauren's computer still from that.
I'm sure it is.
All right, and we'll get into the debate on it. We'll get some feel for it. We'll get some feel for it from the planning board, and then we'll, that's when we're, this committee will get back together to make the strategic decision before we go to print and what we're going to do with it. So, and then we're going to do Article 8, and that's left best for last. I don't, like today, the planning board got a new lawsuit. It's bringing up the single lot exemption. I don't know, we don't want to talk about an active case, but the fact that it's even being talked about is because we've left this open-ended application of the exception. I don't know that people will get that. Yet the change that we're proposing wouldn't eliminate that problem.
Wouldn't affect that, yeah.
It wouldn't affect it. No, the problem was Cohasset passing this originally a long time ago, and now case law says we're stuck with it no matter what we do. But I do want to make the emphasis in the presentation for this that, anybody who has rights is not affected by this. If you have rights, and we can't tell you how many there are, because it takes a study of each person's lot history. But so again, we're explaining that most of Article 8 is housekeeping, cleaning up, consolidating. The Part 1 vote, this is the one place that'll have 2 votes separately. The Part 1 vote keeps the single lot exemption the way we have it, and the Part 2 vote is to change it. And simply explaining the change again is that we cannot affect anybody who has existing rights under the Cohasset bylaw today, but we are seeking to cut off the use of this exception in the future for any new lots that are created after this fiscal year. There are further explanatory slides about the single lot exemption. So before we actually get to the text, I do want to go over that so people try to understand it. And again, I think I know it, but every time you try to explain it, you get tongue-tied with it. So Judge Cutler, be ready to back up on that too. But are those slides still in there, Cassandra? Those should be, yeah, these slides here should be coming before the text. So after the text of Article 2 should be these slides, because first I'm going to go into the explanation before we go to the text of the proposed warrant article. So I don't know if can you move them around?
Yes, yeah, I had
All right.
tried to do it based off of, so you just want,
So this one, the
Two to go
single lot
before this?
exemption, the Cohasset version of it, go further down. Repeal the proposed changes, and I think that's just 4 of them, right? These 4 slides will go in order before the text, and then we'll get to the text.
Okay.
So I think back to the introduction to this, we were trying to also explain what nonconformity means. You know, and I haven't asked them, but I hope that Woody, since this is purely the zoning board's bailiwick, except, well, actually the planning board can deal with it in the village, but I hope he'll get up and say some supportive words about this as well, or at least maybe some explanatory things. We do have at least, the most recent application of this was in 2017 or 18 when the land court, upheld the zoning board who applied it against the appeal of a neighbor who was upset that a lot was going to get developed next to them, and that lot's developed today.
Tom, one issue that is bothering me, and it was bothering me when we redrafted this. The current single lot exception doesn't say it has to be a residential lot or a lot for residential purposes. And I suspect it may have said that in the 1955 version. No one seems to be able to find it for me. But if it does, and somehow that residential portion got lost somewhere along the way, I think we ought to stick it back
Okay, well, let's go.
and say a lot for residential use, having, maybe built upon, just to get it back in there where it was.
Well, Cassandra, can you just scroll up a sec, just a little bit? All right, it's true. Notwithstanding the lot, a detached one-family dwelling or
What it says, or other lawful building may be constructed on a lot. So I think, I'm suspecting that originally, if the lot was for a single or 2-family use,
Yep.
or a single family use, it was
Well-
protected. But the way it's written now, it's not clear that this only applies to residentially zoned lots.
That's an important distinction, I think.
It is.
But doesn't the reference of 8.3A to 40A section 6 take care of that?
No,
No. Okay.
because that's an or. So it would be exempted under 40A section 6 if it was a lot for single or 2-family dwellings had at least 5,000 square feet of frontage of area, at least 50 feet of frontage, and was not in common ownership. That would be exempted. So that's the set. But or the lots shown on a definitive plan, or there's like all these other things, but your special exception is the lot was recorded before the zoning went in, before that frontage
All right.
area.
So if somewhere in here we put in the word residential somewhere here in an appropriate
We said
place.
under non-conforming single lot exemptions, we said a lot for residential use having less than the required area.
Yeah, and the
All right.
state statute says a lot that's
Or single or 2-family.
single or
residential.
2-family, right?
Right. So we could say that a lot for single or 2-family residential use, or you could say a lot for single family residential use, which is what
Okay.
you have in your current bylaw, but I don't think, I would like to go back and see the 1955 version, because I think this got somehow changed over time, and we want to make sure that we're not giving away more than was originally grandfathered in.
Okay. So you're saying though at the moment there's the risk this could be applied to a commercial lot.
Somebody could argue that, and then they wouldn't even need the minimum area.
And then if we put in the residential thing, a commercial lot would not have benefit of the single lot exemption at
That's
all.
right. And they don't have protections under zoning anyway, unless they've got a structure built on them.
Yeah, this is when you need Woody with some longer knowledge than me. I am not aware that any commercial property has ever tried to apply it, because I'm not so sure that any lawyer out there would think of trying to apply it to a commercial thing based on what 48
Well,
section
it's
6 says.
yeah, but this is ambiguous the way it is in the current
right.
bylaw. It's still ambiguous, and I left it ambiguous because it is ambiguous in the current bylaw. But I'm
All right, well,
nervous
let's,
ambiguous.
well, all right, so in our part 1, we're not changing it at all.
Right.
But here in our part 2, where we do want to change it, and you'd have to amend your warrant article, but right in that first paragraph, a lot for
Well, I suppose you
a-
could say maybe built upon for single, for residential, or for single or two-family use, if we could do that.
all right, well, let's for the slideshow, let's do it right now. So, how do you want to word it?
Well, I don't want to word it yet until I've seen the 55 version.
All right.
Which I can work on getting you.
Yeah.
All right, if we make a.
Do you
yeah,
think
we
in the
make-
interim, Tom, you could also ask Woody too?
I asked Woody,
Yeah.
he didn't,
You did?
he didn't have it.
Can
we
have,
didn't know.
because the thing is we've had some of the cases that we've had regarding the bylaw. We've had people sue even with the plain meaning of the bylaw and challenge some parts of the bylaw that are in, plain sight, that no one would ever waste their kids' inheritance on fighting over. But we've had people do it, and the cases have gone all the way to the appeals court on it. So if
Yeah,
we could make it even more clear and not just rely on an MGL or something as a reference, I think that would be more helpful for sure.
Isn't the town supposed to keep copies of old bylaws?
You are,
Oh, they
the
do,
town
yeah.
clerk should have a copy, I hope.
All right,
Yes.
well, all right, so if we make this edit before Monday, fine, and we'll present it Monday. It would be here in the part 2 part, because we're not changing the existing in the part
Well,
H.
actually, we are. It's the
Right.
same language in this part as it is in the first part. The only change in the second part, or the second article, is to add that other language in, the
Okay,
date.
all right, then
It would be in this version, yeah.
it would be in both versions.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
your second article is not to move it, is not to move this change, it's to amend what's already been passed. So if this passes, your next motion under this article is going to be to insert those cutoff dates. You're not going to be moving a whole new version.
No, but for purposes of this slide, I'm having the whole text of it as how it will read.
Yeah,
Pre
okay.
and post amendment.
Okay.
All right, so, all right, so, I mean, just, all I could ask is, give me the heads up before Monday night that if it's
Yeah.
been changed.
All right.
Because it might be worth, I think it's worth pointing out to people. Even though it's never really come up with commercial properties, I think it's worth pointing out to people that, also, in this housekeeping and the updating of the Article 8 language, we're also taking away an ambiguity that exists in this respect.
Or reverting, well, hopefully we're reverting back to its original.
Yeah, if we can find it.
Original language is loose. We're going to be, I think we have to sort of leave it, maybe get it back closer to what it says.
Yeah, I would be surprised if anybody tried to interpret as applying to commercial, but there's nothing wrong with being.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it, and so I understand that Danny at town meeting will give us more than the 5 minutes so we can make the overall presentation, but the presentation and approach the forum the same way. It's I don't know, 10, 15 minutes of introduction at most. And then really Articles 1, 2, 1, 3, 6, and 12 for the most part should blow through quickly. So should most of the definitional changes, and we'll just highlight where there's room for debate and where we want some feedback from people. Anybody else have anything to add? Question, comment?
Yeah, Tom.
Dave.
The work that you've done and Cassandra has done, and I know Lauren before, this is really tremendous stuff. And to have this meeting is really important coming up next Monday. But with as it's being taped after that meeting, no matter how many people show up to it or see it as it's being broadcast live, we definitely, whether it's through Justin or whoever, we have to definitely get it in that YouTube version so that we can pass it around in whichever way, whether it's on Cohasset 143, whether it's to friends we have on Facebook, and if they want to dive into it, they can dive into it.
Yeah.
And then also on the Cohasset cable television network, there's a lot of dead air there. So if we could get it post-meeting put on there, because it's got to really, the people who would see it in that context are the people who go to town meeting. The people who watch the Cohasset television are the ones who go to town meeting, and every single person that is able to see at least a portion of it, even if they don't want to watch however long our meeting is, they're going to get up to date and they're going to be ready to go when we get to town meeting, as opposed to saying, what is this and how is it? It'll really be a great help, I think, to the citizens to get it out in every direction that we can post the meeting next Monday.
Yeah, well, the forum, like the past ones we did, is being broadcast live by 143 simultaneously. It's just that people watching and there have no ability to interact with us. So I know, Cassandra, back when we did the others, those were automatically taped that night and then put up there, right? They were out there, and I never watched them on 143 TV, so I don't know how many times they were repeated. I'm just, with the dead air that they have, we could say to them, can you do some heavy repeats of this before town hall? Now, that being said, if we, when we come to the planning board or the select board and advisory committee and we run into something where we have to make some substantive change, we'll also have to get out there in many forums that we've made a change to something, so that somebody doesn't look at YouTube and then come to town meeting, hear something different, and say, hey, what the hell, happened here? But I would agree, we should, and I'll get Cassandra, we make a note to Justin that, after this is over Monday, to ask 143 to rebroadcast as much as possible.
Can I interject here, Tom?
As well as YouTube, so.
Yeah, we will have it on YouTube. And then we will have the file put on the available on the website. So Cassandra, you let Justin know we will do that. So we've done this before. So Cassandra, if you could make sure Justin's aware that he's going to have to get that onto the website.
Yeah. Right now, by the way, on the ZBC's page is this slideshow, and then Cassandra, the edited one will have to go back up. And then all of the judges' articles are up, I think, at this point. And again, if we edit Article 8, we'll just need to do the switch. So we are directing people to also, on the postcard that went out, that all of this is available. And, I have to remind myself to continue to remind people at the forum that this is where you can read this stuff in more detail if you wish.
Tom, I think it's also, just in case, for whatever reason, after the planning board public hearing, there are going to be some changes. I think people need to be aware that they can speak their mind. They can, if they're concerned, this is the time to talk about it while there's still time to make changes. You don't want to make them, but if it's necessary, those are things that can be contemplated, and you don't want to make it look like it's fait accompli and it doesn't matter what people say.
Yes,
Right,
most certainly they're not stone tablets. Yes.
Right. No, I'm making a note. I'm making my note to myself on my cover page to remind people of that. And by the way, when I introduce people, at least at town meeting, I'm going to repeat that we're charged for 7 people and we only have 5. So when we might, try to solicit 2 more people to participate for the for the big stuff we have coming in the fall. So I want to mention that as well.
By the way, just a little inside information. The tonight at 11 o'clock news and Channel 5, they've discovered the arraignment of the gentleman who got into our high school and used the electricity to mine cryptocurrency. So you heard it here first. So watch Channel 7 at 5 o'clock. Anyway.
No, this sleepy
I
little
have no
town.
idea.
Sleepy
I have no
little
idea.
town.
I have no idea what all that crypto stuff means. So
Oh, it's all right. It means you knew it.
okay, I'll watch it tonight.
Yeah.
All right, so hopefully we'll get good attendance for this. Hopefully we'll get some good feedback from this. I want to emphasize at the beginning to people to encourage that this is not like town meeting where it's just presentation vote. It's give us what you think about this stuff. The planning board, we are also going to do the hybrid meeting. So we're finally going to get to see what each of us look like in real life. We haven't met live in a long time. For that one, Clark and I can vote, obviously, but we're going to have Judge Cutler do the whole presentation. And as I said, she might look at mine on Monday and decide there's a completely different way to do this. But we're going to have Judge Cutler do this because I don't want somebody coming up and saying, well, how do Callahan and Brewer get to both present it and vote on it? You know, so, and then we're not yet scheduled for the select board, the advisory committee, and zoning, but we're going to get them all scheduled. Hopefully before we go. The print is probably early April, I would guess, Jack, for May 1.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's your outside deadline for the little blurbs. But
Okay. We'll try
you know,
and get it
if we're going to do
I'd like to
changes,
see
you know,
them.
and if we're going to, you know, for like this thing before Monday night about Article 8, if we're going to do changes on the fly, we need to do them quickly so that we have the information on the web page and out there for people.
Yeah, we want to give the committee a chance to go through the forums and all that before you give us kind of the final briefing. So let us know when you're ready.
Yeah, your presentation, I'm envisioning that your presentation, the ZBA and the advisory committee are much shorter. You don't have to go through all the introductory stuff. And it's really, by that time, you will have seen forums, you will have the materials, and I'm more anticipating questions to come at us. And
Well, the
so
select
all
board,
of those will be Zoom meetings,
Yeah.
Judge Cutler, and whether you come to select board, advisory, and ZBA is up to you. It'd be great to have you there to answer things that I can't answer. So
well, we've been fairly successful in making the select board meetings a little bit more efficient and move faster. So I expect that we'll be able to move through this, you know, fairly quickly, and we'll do on major issues. And we've been doing pretty good on eliminating filibustering.
okay. All right, so that's that. The next thing I'd like to discuss is so the only other thing on the agenda is a look ahead toward the fall, and my preliminary thoughts, and I don't know, Judge Cutler, if you need to be there for this or that or not. But
Well,
I
yes, because
do-
it matters what I'm going to be
No, but
working
I-
on in a couple of months.
I do want to address an issue that's suddenly become a hot button issue. Jack, no disrespect, Jack called me while I was down in New York yesterday about the village parking. And our bylaw, so at the moment, through the work of the working group and up to this point, there's been no proposal to change our parking bylaw at all, but we were going to have an outside expert make sure we're at the state of the art for the dimensions of our parking spaces and how many spaces are needed per different uses. Okay, now the village has come up, it always comes up. The most recent thing, if I may, from what I saw, I was watching one of your meetings, is that when the outdoor beer and oyster garden has finally been permitted.
Hold on. On a 48-hour emergency situation, just because somebody sends a letter or has a conversation does not, I don't believe, rise to the level of that. And although I think it's important that at some point we discuss this, we're going to discuss village parking, we ought to make sure it's properly posted
All
beforehand.
right, that's fine. I guess my point is that I made to you the other day, I do not think it is appropriate to try to quickly
We
do a
can,
change to it at this town meeting.
we can discuss that in the proper meeting when it's on the agenda.
Okay, Jack.
Okay.
I will just emphasize that I would be very disappointed if the select board tried to do that.
It's not on the agenda.
All right,
We have,
all right.
we have a chief justice here who's going to put us all on the slammer. So,
I don't think it, well, the 48-hour thing is about for anything that was unanticipated before. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm not going to argue with you
all
about
right,
it. But
fine.
so, all right, looking ahead to the fall, yes, it's an ambitious schedule. We are going to have a lot of articles, but I outlined some thoughts about how we approach it. I think it's rather obvious that what we do to Article 4 and 5, the uses and the dimensions, are going to be the biggies and the critical ones. Lauren and I had a discussion, and I want to jump into these right after the Springtown meeting. We'll do it, an analysis of what happened in the spring, and we'll lick any wounds we might have, but we need to jump right into it because the deadlines, even for a early December town meeting, come upon us pretty quickly. There's, again, I won't say where I get these ideas. People have said a number of things. The master plan did some surveys, the village bylaw was done a number of years ago, but attitudes change, people change, current sentiment may be different, and we are really going to have to get a lot of feedback from the community again on what we want to do, especially with the dimensions. I think the table of uses is a relatively easy project. It's to simplify, it's just to,
Wait, not, that is the
well,
most.
a concept of simplifying it versus our incredible laundry list of nonsense that forced somebody.
But there's many issues in terms of what's going into.
No, I understand.
Staying out. I mean, there's discussions that you want to probably have with the committee.
Right, there's some things with Article 5 especially that we will need some outside expertise on. Particularly if we entertain anything about frontage or setback changes and the impact of that.
Okay, here's where I have to interrupt. My role in this right now is to help you basically update and recodify, not to do massive changes. If we're talking about massive changes, it
Yes.
totally changes the complexion of the project.
All right, well, we'll discuss that, but that is always.
We may have to do it on parallel.
Yeah,
thing,
Tom,
but
yeah, I
No,
agree.
no, I'm gonna
Butler.
cut you both off
Yeah.
with all due respect. The changing this bylaw has always been an objective of the working group and carried over into this committee. It has always been that. And it was going to be done in 3 phases, now it's 2, but it was always that. And if that changes the scope of work, fine, we'll talk about the change of the scope of work. But that was always an objective.
We have asked, the select board has asked Chief Justice,
Good.
they asked her to provide some services to allow us to move this forward. And I'm well aware of the complexity of the other issues, and they are not simply just dimensional because they really reflect a lot of how the community at large will look. And I think we're going to have to dive into that. But I think for now, we probably don't want to do with it because it will be, there's a lot of ramifications, which is when you get into it, they're not immediately apparent, but when you get into it, they become very apparent. And when we're ready to do that, yes, we have to do that, but not now.
Not now, when? Now, tonight? We're shooting for this for the fall town meeting.
Right. So
Okay.
let's get.
And all I was pointing out in this outline is how to approach that.
Fine.
Some things need outside assistance and study. Some things do not. Some are low-hanging fruit. Some we are subbing out for example, to the alternate energy committee to help us on. I question whether we bring Concom into this process. We have model bylaws that we discussed at the forum in December on climate and low impact development to look at and to see how those could be integrated into Cohasset. But you know, if we were going to just do housekeeping to the bylaw, well, then we should have taken the whole diagnostic and passed it for every article right now. But that's not what the thing was set up for originally 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now. So I'm just pointing
Set
out
up
that there
this-
is a lot
all
of
right,
work to do.
Tom, all right, so we can discuss this, you know, later on. The charge of this committee is not the charge of 2 years ago. The charge of this committee was, this committee is a separate committee, not a subcommittee of the master plan. So I'm just saying that let's just not get too deep. We are aware of
I'm
those
not
things.
trying to
be-
get deep,
Okay.
Jack, but we have to
Fine.
look. But we have what we have ready for the spring. So we have other airtime like now. You don't want to talk about it tonight. I'll bring it up at the next meeting and the next meeting and the next meeting, because after May 1st, we have to jump into it. And the charge, as I see it, hasn't changed. It's to rewrite and update the Cohasset zoning
That's
bylaw.
correct.
Okay, that involves thinking about
That's
the
fine.
kind of changes the town considered in 1969 and 1986. That type of comprehensive core provision change that we haven't discussed in 36 years.
That's exactly.
Okay. And
Tom,
I'm just trying to
Tom,
get us into
Excuse me,
the,
Tom, just a quick thought.
Yeah.
When I read your list, the thing that jumped out at me the most was, while you have some salient thoughts in your zoning reform, I really think we need to get through this first step with the zoning bylaw overhaul and see how it goes. Hopefully, the changes are thoughtful and that we have that it's understood at town meeting. And with the feedback from the forums and the planning board, we feel like we have a way forward for more aggressive reform, if that's what everybody wants. But I really think one thing at a time.
I get it. I'm
If
simply
you want
bringing it
to,
up.
if you want to kick around some like discrete zoning change thoughts, like what about the harbor? And you want to listen to what everybody has to say, then I'm all for kind of
We did that.
fighting those
We did
off
that.
one at a time
We did
uh,
that.
as
And-
maybe
and we
single
did-
issue things that we can look at and get consultant input. But not all of it all at once, just because here it is out of Tom's head. I just think it's the first step is to prepare, be as thoughtful and careful as possible with the
Which we
town
have
zoning
done.
bylaw for
Mark.
this
Which
first
we
go
have
round.
done. All I'm doing.
I'm
bringing
not
this
saying
up
we
tonight
haven't,
is
I'm
to-
just,
I know, but all I'm doing is to bring up that even though it is February and we haven't gone through this town meeting, we do have to start planning for the next one. That's all.
it's a good
And
point.
I'm throwing out some thoughts and ideas of how to approach the fall.
I suggest, Tom, that what we should do if we're going to have that, we should put it on the agenda. And I think it is appropriate for us to kick some issues
It's
back
on the
and forth
agenda, Jack.
for tonight.
Yes. Never mind. All right.
I mean, I
If we-
think it's valuable that we do that, and I think Clark has a very good point. And just so you know a little bit of what we're dealing on the select board level, we're trying to get things that can be done to move forward in a way that meets some kind of community consensus. And when we take some steps that we know we can take, we're taking them. It doesn't mean we're not aware of things that you brought up very eloquently, Tom, because we are aware, but we want to move that. And I suggest that probably at some point we should have a meeting of this bylaw committee to go over exactly the stuff that you just mentioned. But right now, we want to make sure we get April done right. And yes, we are going to have to do the fall meeting. So I'm not disagreeing with
All
you.
right, and all I'm trying to point out here is outlining an approach to that
Good.
with the understanding that 4 and 5 are the most significant. And how do we get, my next question, that I got to it, was how are we going to get public input for that? And the forms we presented, which covered some of the topics that will be dealt with in the fall, were forms. They were present and get feedback, present and get feedback. Now, Lauren has suggested other modes of doing that, a roundtable discussion. All I'd
Sure.
like to know is, all I would like for people
Oh.
to think about right now, tonight in February, is think about ideas about, once May comes around, how we can start soliciting town opinion on the very important issues of Articles 4 and 5.
Okay.
From those will be all the other articles and changes will flow out of 4 and 5 and what we do there. So, and there are ideas that have been bandied about that are in my questions. These are the ideas that have been bandied about, and some of them we have to go to town meeting with backup. For example, house size. We did our own research. We have data on that, but I'd like it confirmed by an outside expert. If you're going to change frontage or lot size or whatever, you have to have a study to understand what's the ramifications of keeping this property this way or changing the frontage in areas and what will be developed there. We have to have that. That's all I'm saying. And that takes time to get, and we just need to be starting to work on that, even if it's February. That's all I'm saying.
So,
And we need,
fine,
and to the extent the
fine.
master plan surveys
but
of
we're-
5 years ago are no longer relevant,
Well-
then we need to find a new way, a new method of soliciting town opinions and input to proceed forward. All
Well,
right, that's all
I
I'm
think we can
suggesting.
think about those things, but I think that,
That's all tonight was to
Oh.
start thinking about it, that's all.
yeah, I mean, we've got a lot to execute between now and May, because you've got the different boards that you have to go in front of beyond next week's forum. So, you know, when we actually have town meeting and see if it passes, you know, that's gonna be a lot, because even though it's housekeeping stuff, we're gonna end up doing a post-mortem after that and saying, you know, what worked, what didn't work, and that ties into what you're doing for the fall, because you might
Correct.
say the forums are something totally different. We didn't get
Yes.
the effect that we were looking at. But that depends on town meeting. If people are there and they understand, they prepared, and the information was disseminated enough where everyone's on an equilibrium of what's going on with these, then we might say, geez, everything's great, let's do the same thing over. But I think we're not going to know until we go to town meeting and see what the reaction is from the people.
I don't
Um,
disagree. I'm just
yeah.
saying, I don't want to start from a cold start on May 2nd. I'm
No,
just saying,
no.
start thinking about these things. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I have one question which is really important as we go forward, and then as we're thinking going into the fall. When is the project going to be completed down at the harbor? Because because public opinion is certainly going to be in a different realm once that's built. When's the final build out for that?
They seem to be moving along. I don't go down there a lot, but they seem to be moving right along.
Yeah, I don't know what the schedule is.
And I don't know what the time frame is on the Atlantica project, because that's going to generate changes that I
Yeah.
don't know that they're as stark as the changes for the hotel, but
And I only bring that up for that when we're thinking of going forward with things, is that whatever projects are in the town now that will be completed, that will be the fresh thing that will be in people's forefront of their mind with whatever changes we do going forward. That will be the last thing that they've seen or heard. So we have to sort of keep an eye on that. And public opinion can go positive or negative vis-a-vis that. I'm not saying that the projects are bad in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that most certainly how people feel about them will color how things need to be talked about and presented going forward.
right, no, that's true, because that's what's happening in the village to a certain extent. I thought, Clark, didn't they originally tell us they were looking like at an early 2024 finish?
You know, I don't remember, but there's nothing like having a full-scale model to see what things with the bylaw, how they worked out.
I don't think they had 3-dimensional drawings for us for the presentation, but it was all done by Zoom, so I don't know if they have models.
No, I mean,
But-
the actual built building is a full-scale model.
Yeah, no, I don't know if they have any, but I wonder if we could ask them. Anyway, all right, I'm just, again,
All right.
this is just,
Okay,
and by the way, anybody can write another one of these too, what your thoughts are on these different, what issues are presented by the rest of the bylaw.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Tom, to leave that open.
Yeah,
know,
absolutely,
I'll just
absolutely.
point out, I want-
These are just
One
my,
thought that I had was, I read a statistic in the master plan that 67% of the lots or houses on lots that are non-conforming by size. If you couple that with non-conforming by setback and height and you have a substantial number, 80% or more of existing houses are existing non-conforming. And where it becomes problematic is when somebody builds a new house and it doesn't quite fit in a neighborhood, like an infill. It seems to me that there should be an option that would allow the goal of having changes to neighborhoods vis-a-vis new houses built in such a way that they fit their context better than just what conforming to the bylaw would be. Just a concept.
yeah. And I mean, I'll tell you, in the working group, when we talked about house size, there's supportable data of how much larger they have gotten since 2000. And we talked about what do we do today? We do lot coverage and height and setbacks, but switching to FAR for residential development and putting a harder limit on it, because as well as I do at large home review hearings, we hear a sentiment that there's too big houses in town. So, but that's what we have to gauge. We have to say to people, look, here's the data before 2000, the houses were average of this size. Here's what they are since 2000. What do you like? Do you care? Do you care that they're getting exponentially bigger or not? And then we regulate accordingly. And then the regulation might be to just leave it the way it is.
Right.
And that's fine.
I agree that careful analysis and presentation of
Yeah,
what
I mean,
this
we have the
might mean
data.
makes sense to find out what really matters to people.
okay.
Yeah, and I think, particularly when people, the sentiment is coming out that, oh, the town's getting overdeveloped. Okay, well, what does that mean? Overdeveloped where? Overdeveloped how? Is it individual house sizes? Is it the village? Is it the harbor? Is it 3A? And I want ideas on how to get that out of people. Rather, the 3 types of forums we presented in the the end of last year, are probably not the best way to draw that out of people. It may be a town survey like we did for the master plan, questionnaire, or something like that. So I'm basically throwing this out for ideas, but we have to hit the ground running on May 2nd, in addition to, analyzing what happened on May 1st at town meeting. So
Right. And all the data in the world doesn't really give you the philosophy of a community necessarily, whether
Yeah.
it's a laissez-faire philosophy or that's it, we're all done. We don't want anything else, even if we have 46% open space in our land
yeah,
area.
no, I know.
So what? That's just because it's triple whatever our neighbors are, doesn't matter. We want to limit growth as much as possible. If that's the philosophy, and I'm not saying that it is, we should get to it and not beat around the bush. Like,
I agree.
All right, so
Anybody, you're not the chair of this
just
committee,
waiting.
all right?
I'm
I
not
understand.
there, but
I
can make a
don't
motion to
have
adjourn.
minutes to present for the first
Okay.
time. I'm sorry. I will catch
it's
up.
okay, Tom, cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
Is there any other business that we have to address for tonight? Judge Cutley?
I was going to suggest that I go ahead and start to at least prepare an outline of what section 4, this is the use section, would look like. But there would have to be probably 3 options, because the committee will have to decide whether you want to deal with the multifamily use by right choice zoning
Housing
in
choice.
the existing overlay district, transit overlay district, or whether you want to put it into the use regulations in other districts. That's an important issue that really needs to be resolved sooner rather than later. Also solar and also exempt uses all have to be dealt with in
Yep.
the.
No, I understand that, and I actually would welcome you to do that, because right now, my very simplified version of Article 4's chart is the only one that's out there for discussion. But, you know, remember that we have a laundry list of uses, and
Yeah, you have too many uses, and so we
yeah,
really.
the dog thing on 3A had to go to land court to get permission to open, because we defined one type of dog use and not another
Right.
type, and it's ridiculous. So
There have to be.
No, it
categories.
didn't. We just changed the bylaw, Tom. It didn't have to go to land court. We changed the zoning bylaw, like,
oh, I thought they had to go to court to get it. That's.
But
No.
you shouldn't have to change for
Well,
each.
anyway, but that's, you know, again, we have to, you know, there's a philosophical approach to my approach to Article 4. There'll be a philosophical approach to that other people have to it. But yes, I would do that, please.
Okay, so what I'm gonna try and do is with the goal that I'll hit you with it sometime in April, so you'll have
Yeah,
it in
that's
May.
fine. No,
and
that's
ultimately-
fine. I just want to be able to hit the ground running, and if we do find that we need to do any kind of survey of the community, a questionnaire or whatever, that needs to go out sooner rather than later, given the timeline for fall town meeting. We want that feedback by the summer so that we
Yeah.
can start dealing with. Again, some of these other articles are simple to deal with. They're actually fairly simple, but you know, there are a couple, by the way, that I pointed out help. Somebody taking charge. If we do a climate change / resiliency, you know, MAPC said to us at that forum, they have a model bylaw. Okay, somebody needs to study it and turn it into a Cohasset bylaw. Clark, you know, we have cluster development, then we have low impact development. Are they separate concepts? Can they merge? Nobody uses our cluster development bylaw, but
it
you know,
has been used, yeah.
well, one of the points is there's a couple of these articles where I'd like to have somebody take the lead in doing the legwork for the study and model bylaws and Cohassetizing them and getting them ready with the help of Judge Cutler.
I understand that you've been taking on the burden, and you may be a little resentful taking on too much burden on all these things.
Well, that's why I wrote this to ask.
I wish I could offer to stick my neck out on something right now specifically, but I just can't right now. But well, let's talk about that more offline if that's okay with you, Tom.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, no, it's understandable. I have too much free time in my hand. You know, I don't have little kids like you anymore, you know, so.
Well, yeah,
It's a whole different dynamic now.
no, I mean, I'm also losing my parents, which is hard, so I'm sort of stuck between enormous responsibilities.
All right, well, all I'll ask for tonight is everybody read this that was on the agenda, and any suggestions, change concepts of the way we should approach this, please do. I just think it's May seems far off, but we just can't start from a cold start.
I think that's fair, Tom.
All right.
That's fine.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, David, second.
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Tom Kelly and I.
Clark
David
Ruth.
Frog, aye.
I'm assuming Jackson and I will vote for Jack. We'll see
Thank you.
everybody Monday. It is at 7 p.m.